Anneliese Michel, is a German girl in the prime of her youth and full of hope. Her life suddenly turns into an unbearable hell when evil spirits take possession of her and steal her soul and her will. She is Anneliese Michel, the girl who, in the eyes of some, turned into a saint who fought the devil and defeated him. Her body was inhabited by 6 or more spirits. Anneliese Michel was born in a town in the German province of Bavaria in 1952 to a devout Catholic family. She lived a normal life until the age of 16, when she suddenly developed some strange symptoms, such as severe trembling and lack of control over the movements of some parts of her body. Therefore, her parents admitted her to the hospital to receive the necessary treatment. But her condition continued to deteriorate, and she began to see shadows of strange faces staring at her and to hear terrifying voices and screams in her head, telling her that she would burn in hell. During psychological therapy sessions, Anneliese told her doctor that her body was haunted and that strange voices began ordering her to perform some tasks that she had no choice but to do. She wanted to do it, but her doctor interpreted her words as just a hallucination, which made Anneliese lose hope in medical treatment and began to seek it through church exorcism sessions. Her parents petitioned several priests to perform the process of removing the jinn from her body, but their request was rejected twice. This is because the church has special standards for recognizing that a person has been touched by the jinn, and one of the most important of these standards or conditions is that the person shows intense hatred and deep aversion to religious symbols or symbols, to speak a foreign language that he or anyone in his family has no familiarity with, or to possess strange supernatural powers. Anneliese's condition began to get worse. She began cursing and insulting her family members and biting anyone who tried to approach her. She also began to abstain from eating because the jinn living in her prevented her from doing so. She began tearing her clothes, sleeping on the floor, and devouring spiders and flies. She began screaming hysterically for hours. She smashed any cross she could get her hands on, tore up pictures of Christ, and broke flower pots and roses. She also began to bite parts of her body, urinate on the floor of the room, and sometimes drink her own urine. Due to her poor condition, the church finally agreed to hold sessions to expel the jinn from her body, and during the years 1975-1976, 1 or 2 sessions were held weekly for Anneliese, who told them during these sessions that her body was haunted by 6 or more evil spirits, including the spirit of Cain, Nero, and Hitler. Although Anneliese began to feel some relief after the church sessions, she did not fully recover, and she was constantly exposed to severe hysterical attacks similar to epilepsy, during which her body would freeze as if paralyzed and she would lose consciousness. The jinn expulsion sessions in the church continued for several months and were often attended by the same people, from the priests, Anneliese's parents, and sometimes some of the congregation. The priest recorded the proceedings of the sessions on 40 audio tapes over a period of 10 months, and Anneliese would sometimes get out of control during the sessions, which required 3 strong men to control her, even though her weight no longer exceeded 40 kilograms, and sometimes they were forced to chain her. The last session that was conducted was on July 30th, 1976, and during this period Anneliese was completely exhausted as she was suffering from pneumonia and a high fever. She had also become extremely weak and thin as a result of abstaining from eating for a long period, and her last sentence was, during her last session, was begging for forgiveness. And in the evening of that day, Anneliese turned to her mother for the last time and said in a shaking voice, "Mother, I am afraid." These were her last words as she died that same night. The police arrested the 2 priests who conducted the jinn expulsion sessions, as well as Anneliese's parents, on charges of negligence leading to death. According to the police report, the main cause of Anneliese's death was hunger as a result of her abstention from eating. The police concluded that if Anneliese had been forced to eat a week before her death, it would have been possible to avoid her death during the trial. Anneliese's sister said that her late sister hated the hospital because they forced her to take medicines and food. Some tapes recorded for Anneliese during church sessions were also shown, which contained some strange sentences or phrases, including, for example, an argument-like dialogue between 2 jinn were around who should leave Anneliese's body first, and they were speaking in a manly voice and with a strange accent. However, the psychiatrist who was brought by the court to scientifically analyze Anneliese's condition said that she was suffering from a severe psychological disorder and that she could have been saved from death if she had been brought to the hospital a week before her death. Accordingly, the court found Annelise's parents, as well as the priests, guilty. They were sentenced to 6 months in prison with suspension for each of them. After her death, Anneliese became a saint in the eyes of many, and her grave became a place of pilgrimage for many visitors. Her life and story also became a subject of great interest, and several films were filmed inspired by her story. Goodbye and be careful.